Hello, welcome to the webinar. My name is Alexandra Alvarado. I'm the Director of Marketing and Education here at the American Apartment Owners Association. And today we are going to be talking a bit about pricing your rentals, specifically single family rentals. We actually haven't covered this topic before, so I'm really excited to go through some of these rental pricing tactics that you may not have thought of before, that I think can really refresh some of your strategies that you currently have going. So before we begin, just a couple of things. One is we are recording this as usual, so please take notes, but we will be sending you the recording tomorrow anyway, just in case you miss anything. You'll also get the PowerPoint presentation and slides, so you'll have those to also print out if you want later. And we'll also have time for questions. Our speaker here today, Darius, he's going to spend some time answering questions at the end, but you can put your questions as they come up in the question box, preferably not the chat, so that we can keep better track of your questions and which ones have been answered. But we will use the chat from time to time and some poll questions here and there. So you'll use some of the different features of Zoom here. So a little bit about our speaker today, Darius. Thank you for being here. Darius is head of product at Sunroom Leasing, and he is a tech expert with a passion for creating innovative solutions in the single family, residential leasing, and property management industries. He leads a team of talented product designers and managers and collaborates closely with the data and engineering teams to bring his vision to life. Darius's extensive experience as a chief product officer at a high growth startup, as well as his education in computer science and design, make him a valuable asset at Sunroom. So Darius really does work a lot here on the property management side of things and providing products for property managers like yourselves. So he's going to really dive in deep to see what is exactly, or show you exactly what's happening in the industry right now and what are the trends in rental pricing tactics. So Darius, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to our audience today. I am really excited to learn a little bit more about what you have to share.
Great. Thanks so much, Alexander, for the intro. I'll just add to that before I share my screen. So Sunroom Leasing, just want to say, that's what we're working on now. We do leasing for property managers. We have about 4,000 doors that we do leasing for. So I've been working on this for about 6 years and been building my knowledge through that. So I'll start sharing my screen and excited to...
4,000 doors of experience. That's enough to give you years of experience in a short period of time.
I know. It's wild, really quick growth.
Yeah.
All right. So put together a little slideshow for everybody, just talking about some really important pricing tactics. This is geared towards single family property managers. It is still applicable to multifamily. In fact, you'll probably know if you do leasing in multifamily, you'll recognize some of these strategies. I think multifamily in general has been ahead of the curve when it comes to like operations and technology. So a lot of the things you'll see here are learnings from multifamily. And so, yeah, just real quick, who is this for? It's for you. It's for you, the property manager. Now, I think this is just an important mindset to have when going into leasing. I think these two things are not talked about very much, but it really drives the leasing process. So the first one is just understand that the market is the thing that decides the value of the product, which is the property, and the investor is deciding their strategy. So those are two separate things. The investor's strategy could change over the course of the listing, but the market, it only changes so quickly. In fact, it maybe only changes every few months. So I'm going to bring these back up as we keep talking, but this is just really important to understand because of the price really is dictated by these two things. So let's just talk about how to get the investor's strategy. Well, you just got to ask the question, which one do we want to try? Are you trying to go for high rent or you're trying to have a short vacancy? I think most people want both. But you as the property manager really need to get them to choose one path, because you really can't have both. And this is just an important decision to remember, because every time you talk to this investor, you're going to want to bring up their strategy that they decided in the beginning. They may be able to change that strategy, right? They can always change what they want to do, but it is good to reference, because everything you do from here on is going to be because you got them to say, well, I want short vacancy, or I want a high rent. All right. And how do these kind of two concepts go together, right? The two strategies, let me flip back, right? So the market deciding the value, and then the investor deciding the strategy. So how do those kind of play together? I think let's just visualize it real quick. This looks more complicated probably than it really is, but this is an example of a market that has rents, listings with most of the rent for these 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot for leases that have happened the past 60 days. It seems like most of the market values those properties between, $1,700, $1,800 is what it's kind of showing here. So another way to interpret this is if the investor wants to price it any higher than that, well, they should expect more days on market. If they want to price it lower than that, then they should probably expect less days on market. So in this example, the investor's strategy is right here. So you can see they want a relatively high price compared to how the market decided the value of their property. So they should expect a longer than average days on market. So I don't know if I'm going a little too quick, but I just want to make sure everyone got that right. There's a strategy that the investor needs to decide. And then it's really up to you as the property manager to understand the market well enough so that you can say, hey, it looks like although you wanted low days on market, you actually really want a high price because most of the properties are priced over here. So if you really want a short vacancy, you should probably price it around here or to the left. All right, so I think this is just a call out. I think every property manager has problem listings, is what they say, right? And hey, there's a few properties that just haven't leased yet. They're on the market for 60 days, 70 days. Well, I just want to, have a reminder that not every listing has the same problem. And the problem is defined by that investor's strategy, right? So you might have people on your leasing team who maybe get a little frustrated because there's a property that's still on the market for a really long time. Well, just make sure that they know that, hey, the investor's strategy might actually be getting high rent. So you can look and, reference that strategy later. Looks like we have a question. Where are you finding the listing data with a realtor? From K Thor. So yeah, the listing data. So we'll get into that. Oh, without a realtor. Okay. Yeah, where are you finding the listing data without a realtor? I can give you a quick answer to that, and we can go more into it later in the slides. But most of the listing data can actually just be found on Zillow if you don't have access to the MLS. Zillow has a rental CMA tool. It is really helpful. It works just like a CMA tool, and yeah, it's a good one to use. It's free. It even has like a PDF you can export. All right, so let's talk about properly running a CMA, right? I think everyone knows what a CMA is, but let's just define it real quick, right? It's comparative market analysis. So key word here being comparative. So you're trying to find listings that are similar. Now, all too often, this is how I started in leasing. This is how a lot of people start in leasing, is they don't compare the entire product, like the actual property. Most of the time, you kind of go through the specs. I would say most people get stuck on the specs, such as the beds, the baths, square footage, all that. I just want to make sure that when you guys run a CMA, you do consider the experience, which maybe is a vague word. So I gave you a maybe better definition here. It's the experience, the looks of the place, generally how the place works. the reason you got to consider both of these is, well, that's exactly how a renter shops, right? They don't just look at the specs, they go tour the property, they look at the photos, they just want to see how is it actually to live in this property. So here's a list of some of the things that fall into each of those categories, right? So the specs, the looks, the marketing photos are probably the most important out of all of those. And you can focus in on the kitchen, the kitchen finishings. A lot of time the kitchen is a big selling point. Let's talk about that a little more. So there's something important about this days on market, which is why I put an asterisk next to it. Oh, it looks like we got a question. Which realtor app is more accurate, Zillow or Redfin? I don't know the answer to that. I have been using Zillow for a long time, so I do recommend Zillow. And yeah, I would try Redfin, but Zillow has been working for me. So on the days on market, I have this little asterisk there because, again, it always goes back to the strategy of the investor. So a lot of time you'll fall into the trap of choosing leases for we're talking about the CMA still. So you might fall into the trap of choosing leases that were, maybe happened in the past 60 days that were really quickly leased, had a short days on market. So remember, that's not what every investor wants. So when you do actually compare and you find those comps, how do you know what comps performed well, right? That's what we're just saying. It's depending on that investor's strategy. So again, high rent, what that really means is you should actually be comparing their rent, rather their listing, to listings that had a high rent and probably leaned a little bit higher on days on market, where if they want short vacancy, you do the opposite. And so again, you can I think a really easy way to find this is you go to the MLS, you go to Zillow, you pull the comparables, the listings that are similar, and then you go look at how many days on market they were. Now, if a listing was only on market for 14 days and you're using that as a comparable, well, the investor who wants high rent is, if they're any smart, they would say, hey, that one got leased in 14 days. Don't you think they could have got a little more rent, right? Like, I'm okay with 30 days on market, 45, 50 days on market. I just want a little more rent. So just make sure that's considered when you're pulling comps and you're actually looking specifically at the days on market. So that's how one of those specs is really important depending on the investor strategy. Now, a CMA, I think a lot of people get excited when they receive a CMA or when they finish a CMA, they think, okay, that's the price. But really it's a snapshot of the market at that moment. So it's just a starting point, it's a good starting point, and the more accurate you can get it, that's good, but it doesn't have to be that accurate, right? So just remind your investors and just say, hey, look, this is the snapshot of the market today. It is a marketplace. It has concepts of supply and demand. So just because that one rent price looks good today, it might not be the rent price that it actually gets leased for a month from now. So looks like we have one other question. If you are an individual landlord, can you still use these same strategies? Yes. So it works for individual landlords. I think the individual landlord, when it comes to running a CMA on Zillow, I think it's kind of built perfectly for individual landlords. And so, yeah, definitely works. Same strategies work. Now, that was running a CMA. So kind of went a little quickly through that maybe, but just want to make sure you guys understand. Make sure you're comparing it to the right. Oh, looks like I might have skipped a slide. Make sure you're comparing it to the right listings depending on the investor strategy. That's kind of the main thing. And then also make sure you're looking at marketing photos, right? That's what we said. Don't just look at specs. Actually look at photos. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples, not just any two bed to any other two bed. Okay, it looks like we did skip this one slide, and this is a good one. So if you've been doing leasing for even just a year, you do figure out that the summertime leasing is just way faster, way easier. There's just way more activity going on. And so generally properties seem to rent for a little bit higher price, not be on the market as long. It's a good time. In the winter, it slows down. And so this is just called seasonality. And forecasting seasonality, all I'm really trying to say is sometimes you'll have an investor who wants you to conduct a CMA for a property that will be ready in 60 days, right? It's not rent ready today, but they do want to know what the price they could get. So you run them a CMA. If you do that during an important transition month, such as from August to September, if their property goes on the market in September or October, that's a whole lot different than if their property was on the market July and August, right? So July, August, the market's booming, everything's getting leased. You're going to run a CMA. You're going to find all these properties that were only on the market for 20 days, 25, less than that, and they got rented for however much. If you're using those prices and you're just directly inputting those into the CMA and then suggesting the rent, well, you should just be careful, because you got to remember, wait, is their property coming up for rent in September or maybe late August? You just got to remember that there is a big swing. It's not small. It is a big drop. And so, a lot of people get hung up on having really long days on market because they expected the summer CMA to be true for the rest of the year. It's just not the case. All right, I'll go to the next one. Let me see. I might have had a poll I want to ask everyone. Let me just look real quick. Yeah, Alexander, if you could run the first one, it would be good to know. So now you guys know you need to consider the photos. I'm just kind of curious, what do you guys, how many of you guys actually already do that? Already consider photos? Just be good to know. All right, moving on. Get a price pulse. Okay, so what the heck is the price pulse? Well, it helps you answer some of these questions that I'm sure you don't like getting, right? So how do you answer these questions? So how's my listing going? The investor calls. Any apps? What can we do? That's always the question, right? Why is it not leased yet? What can we do? Well, the reason I really like Price Pulse is because it's something that you can do even if you are a single one leasing operations team, even if you have a leasing operations team and you're on the phone and you just want to get it real quick. A price pulse is something you should be able to pull fairly quickly. So let's talk about what it is. So a price pulse really considers two things: the number of leads and the days on market. Now there's an asterisk here. So days on market at the current rent price. So let's break this down a little bit. So the number of leads, let's say you got in the past 7 days. In this scenario, the property has only been on the market for 7 days. So, okay, let's go look at how many leads came in the past 7 days. We haven't changed the price yet. Really, really simple. Looks like we have 10 leads in the first week. Okay, so that's the type of math. It's very, very basic, right? How many leads per week? Now, it gets a little more complicated if they recently changed the price. Let's say they changed the price 2 weeks ago, and it's actually been on the market for 30 days. Well, you have to go look at how many leads did you get since that last price change. So since it's been at the lower price or higher price, how many leads has it gotten in how long? has it been on the market at that price, and just do the same type of math. It's just, oh, it looks like it got 6 leads in 2 weeks. So that would be about 3 leads per week. And you'll see why that's important for a second, in a second here. So if you don't want to fully understand and go into the depths of this, that's okay. Generally, you want 5 leads per week. I think it's just a good rule of thumb. Again, don't hold me to that. It depends on the market, depends on a whole lot of factors. I do leasing for properties in 13 states in the Sun Belt. So that's the data I've used to gather. And I think that's where a lot of leasing is really happening in the Sun Belt states. So this is what I've seen. You can come up with your own number, but generally 5 leads per week is what you're looking for. Now, that's the easy number to use. If you have the technical ability, if there's, some way that you have other listings that you can see how many leads those listings got, once you have enough of a portfolio, you can start seeing, hey, looks like our other listings that are comparable to the one that we're trying to get leased, they got 7 leads per week, right? So not every listing is the same. Sometimes a 4-bed, 4-bath is just not going to get as many leads per week, not because it's not priced correctly, just because it's a 4-bed, 4-bath. It looks like we got a couple questions here. Let me answer those. So first one from Aaron Boles. What is the legality of charging more on one side of the duplex versus the other side? I might have a lower price on one side because I had to rent in winter, but the other side is available in summer. I can get a higher rent. Am I allowed to charge more? Yeah, you are allowed to charge more. I don't know if that's true in every single district, but I've never heard that being a problem. So I think, Aaron, you're all right. It should be all right to charge 2 different prices in the duplex. In Alabama. Yeah, well, we do leasing in Alabama and we've done that exact thing. So we've looked into it already. So I think you'll be good. And then Doug said, what do you consider a lead? Yeah, good question. Yeah, we've been talking about leads and days on market. So a lead is simply someone who inquires about the listing, who is requesting more information. Most of the time requesting to tour the place. They don't actually have to go on a tour to be a lead. And so if you go on Zillow or any big listing website, there's a button on those sites to inquire and get more information. Basically, if someone clicks that button, they're a lead. So yeah, that's what we're talking about when it comes to leads. So let's keep going. All right, I think I brought this up a little bit before. Just a general tricky marketplace thing. The price of a listing could stay the same, but the leads per week could change, right? So let's go back to these 2 important numbers, right? We're talking about leads, which are basically people that inquired on your listing to get more info, possibly tour, and then how long it's been on the market at that current rent price. So we're trying to find generally which listings are above and below 5 leads a week. So we talked about if you have the ability to make that 5 a little more accurate. So now the reason I bring up this kind of marketplace dynamic, I can go into why that happens, but the reason it's important is just that 1 week you might get those 5 leads, but then the next week you only get 2 leads. And you're kind of wondering, okay, Darius told me 5 leads a week. That happened last week. We didn't change the price. This week it's only 2 leads. What do I do? So in those, that happens all the time. Well, the main reason that happens is simply because of the supply changes, both supply and demand change, but really easily understood. There might be more homes in the neighborhood. And so now, even though there's only 100 renters looking in that neighborhood, there's now 7 homes instead of 2. So naturally, your home might get a little less interest, a little less number of leads. So all I'm saying here is just don't chalk 1 week up to being, the absolute truth. Give it 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. In that situation where you had 5 leads, then 2 leads, give it 1 more week, because you did have a good week with 5. 2 is a bit low. Maybe it's going to go back up the next week. If that's that 3rd week, it's still pretty low, like a 3. Yeah, maybe start considering, depending on the investor strategy, you might want to lower the price. All right. Now this is crazy. I don't think many property managers have told their investor clients to do this before. But this is something that we do at Sunroom Leasing. We have noticed that some listings just get way more leads than 5 leads a week, or way more leads than the comparable listings. And your first reaction is probably, as a property manager, is great. This is going to get leased super quickly. I'm not going to have to, work very hard on this. But I think what I've started to learn is, we're working with fairly large property managers, with REITs as well, is if your investor has that strategy of getting high rent, well, if they're getting a lot of leads per week, then you should actually raise the rent. And how much do you raise the rent by? That's the question. And test it out. Raise it by $100, raise it by $50, and just keep track of it, right? Don't just raise the rent and forget about it. You're doing these price pulses ideally every week, and you can start seeing what's happening with that price change. And the moment you suggest to raise the rent, I'm sure the investor has never heard that before, and you actually get at least at that higher rent, you've just locked in a long-term client. So it's a really powerful thing to do these price pulses. And yeah, don't skimp out on these price pulses, and you'll have a really good chance of either leasing it faster or leasing it at the rent that they're trying to get. Okay. Let's see. So, all right. So let's do pre-leasing. Okay, so pre-leasing, I think a lot of people have considered to do pre-leasing. I'd be interested to know how many people have actually done that before. Maybe Alexandra, if you could release, or if you could do the poll for pre-lease. Great, thanks. Yeah, so pre-leasing is difficult, right? I get why you might not be offering it, but let's just talk about the goal, right? So the goal of pre-leasing, or let me just define pre-leasing real quick. So pre-leasing is when you actually market the property before it's rent ready. So it's going to be, someone's maybe living there, they're going to move out in 30 days, 45 days. You want to get it on the market early, get people's reaction, get get leads, do those price pulses during the pre-lease. And that way you can actually get the right price. And so that's the goal of pre-leasing. You might be pitching it to investors as, hey, this is going to get your property leased before it's vacant. That's just gravy. That don't bank on that happening. Just try to make sure by the time it's actually vacant, the price is a good price, basically. So yeah, most PMs don't, most PMs don't support pre-leasing. Oh yeah, there you go. The poll just came in. So yeah, most PMs don't support it. So yeah, if you do, you really do stand out. Why don't they support it? Why don't people support this thing? It seems pretty popular, right? Well, there are some challenges. Let me just skip to that. So these are probably the main 2 challenges that property managers are facing when they try to do pre-leasing. Well, you are marketing it before the property is ready. before the property's rent ready. And so you have a make ready team that goes out to the property. They might find some things that need to be fixed, and they might not actually get those things completed in time. So even though you marketed it as being ready May 30th, the make ready team and the things they find and whatever happens, it actually turns out it's more like June, mid-June or something that's going to be ready. And now you had all these renters. Maybe you had only one. You had one or two applicants, and they had to move May 30th or one day later, and they now are going to be, not able to move in. So that's a challenge to overcome, and I get that. It's just working really closely with that make ready team, and just building confidence in that team and in your leasing team to work well together in order to turn things around. It's doing condition reports, or rather, I should say, property inspections. When they say when the renter says they give their notice to vacate, that's when you really want to go and inspect the property so that you have time to prepare, to plan, get everything fixed. And then the second challenge with pre-leasing is that some property managers understand it's not great to have all your tenants lease sight unseen, because it'll potentially cause delinquency, eventually an eviction, because maybe they just didn't actually like the place as much as they thought they would. And so two things for that. One is a lot of people are doing self tours, and that's great. You can't really do a self tour when someone's currently living at the property. So still having agents for occupied showings could be really helpful there. Or if you say, you know what, I don't want to have agents, leasing agents, actually going to the properties. Well, you can tell the leads, hey, just apply right now. And then the moment it's vacant, the moment it's ready, you can go tour it. So that way you're at least engaging people, collecting applications, answering their questions. And that hopefully by the time, if you're actually trying to get it leased, hopefully by the time it's rent ready, you'll have an application and they can go tour the property. So this is a slide I skipped over right before. Yeah, this is just a simple one, right? Use last year's photos if you have those photos. If you don't have those photos, use a curb shot. So literally send your photographer out, go take 1, 2, 3 photos from the outside, and use those. Those are good enough. People get excited about how a home looks even from the outside. So if you don't have last year's photos, just take a curb shot, put a little splash photo after the curb shots that just says, hey, more photos coming soon. Just gets people excited. All right. So the condition of the property. I know you guys are asking questions right now. I'll come back towards the end and answer more of these questions just so we can get through the presentation. So, condition of the property. I think this is my favorite line I've been telling to investors. Good tenants want good landlords. Why do I have to say this to them? Well, it's because some landlords, as you might imagine, want a bit of everything, right? They want the high rent, they want the low days on market, they don't want to fix their house. Well, one of those things, not fixing your house and leaving it in a bad condition, can be remedied, I think, with this one line, which has worked wonders for me. I just go and explain to them, hey, good tenants want good landlords. Why is that? Well, generally having a place that's in bad condition is going to attract not the right type of tenants, right? Don't you want someone who's going to pay rent on time, who's going to respect the property, leave it in good condition? Those types of people generally want to tour a property that's already like that. So please, let's clean up the lawn. Let's do all these things, whatever you tell the investor. So good tenants want good landlords. Now, how do you actually understand the condition of the property? So you really got to send someone out there. This could be when they first set up the property, so you don't have to make multiple trips. have some type of cosmetic inspection form. So it's a form that maybe has 30, 40 questions, like, is the entranceway dirty? Is the kitchen, you go through every part of the house, have a checkbox next to each one that says what condition that specific part of the house is in. And then you'll have this report. And the most important part of the report, I think, what I've seen, is the photos, right? So whoever's doing this cosmetic inspection should be taking photos of all the things that show, hey, it's not in great condition, right? The whole point of this inspection is to show them all the things that the renters are going to see when they go tour the property. And what's really powerful, which is in big, big bold here, compare their property's condition to your other listings. So when you go talk to that investor, say, hey, look, we inspected your property. This is the report we have. These are the photos you can see of what the condition is like. Although some of this was not addressed in the make ready because you maybe didn't want to fix it, this is what renters will see, and they probably are not going to take too kindly to a few of these things. And in fact, your property is in poor condition, which is not very common for our listings. Most investors' listings, they're in either good or great condition, but your property, it's kind of in a fair, poor, score. So I think most people generally want to be competitive and want to have their listing perform at least on par or a little better than other people's. So just bringing in how it compares is really helpful. So how often do I do these condition reports? Just one time? Well, it's definitely important to do it at the beginning, so there's no surprises, and so there's things that maybe the landlord or the owner could fix. But oftentimes, you got to go again. You got to go, if the property's on market for 45 days, you really should do another report. This is really because properties don't stay in good condition just being vacant. People tour them. It only takes a couple tours for the next tour to not have a great experience, right? There's a little bit of dirt. There's some leaves that blow in when they open it. They maybe, I don't know, they use the bathroom, which they shouldn't be. Something happens where it's just not going to be a great experience after the 5th, 6th tour that's happened. So do another report every 45 days. You should really only have to do 2 of these reports at most. Most properties should be leased in under 90 days. And another big thing here, which we've recently implemented, is you really got to keep the lawn, cut, trimmed, whatever it is. You got to keep the lawn up every 2 to 3 weeks. Depending on where you live and what the lawn is. It just takes about 2 or 3 weeks for the curb appeal to take a dive, and it's really easy for someone to see your house, see your listing on Zillow or something, go drive by it. Maybe they don't even request more info. Maybe they did, but they're not really going to tour it yet. Let's just drive by it. Let's just see how we like the neighborhood. They drive by it. Maybe the neighborhood's all right. And then they see the lawn. It's all, it's all grown. Maybe there's some trash that blew into it from somewhere. They're not even going to communicate to you at that point, right? You've lost the chance of getting this person in, and maybe the inside of the house looks great. So keep the lawns cut. I think it makes sense for any type of investor strategy. Short days on market, high rent. Both sides really want a good curb appeal. So, all right, this person drove by in the neighborhood, saw the lawn, it's cut, it's looking good. Now you've cleaned up the property maybe a couple times because you've had tours. What do you do with tour feedback? How do you get it? How do you make sure you get it? All that. So just in general, I don't know if everyone fully understands. Tour feedback is what you want. You need tour feedback. It's a snapshot it's a very visceral, very visceral feedback from the market, right? We said in the very beginning, the market decides the value, investor decides the strategy. So this is the market giving you an idea on how they value the property. So it's very important. You have to be getting feedback on 50% or more of your tours. If you're not, you really got to fix something. Most systems out there have automated reminders, but if you're not getting 50% of your tours to have feedback, then you're really losing out and you're underperforming as a property manager. And it's your responsibility to go fix that, whether it's get another tool, have someone on your team call the people who toured, you just have to get it. Again, it's a single data point, right? Each person, they might buy the house, or sorry, they might rent the house, they might not. They might have a strong conviction of what they felt. But just remember, it's just one person at the end of the day for that one tour feedback. Tour feedback starts to really be powerful when you have a few. So I've seen it a ton. One person goes in the property, loves the layout. Next person goes into the property, bad layout. Not enough natural light. Next person, yeah, I love the natural light. So don't go too hard on each individual one. Let them stack up a bit. So what are the two questions, maybe three? What are the 2 or 3 questions that you should actually ask? So there's a lot of questions you could ask. And but the 2 main ones, the first is really about price, right? What do you think of the price? What would you pay? Most of the time, they'll say it's a little expensive. Maybe a third, a fourth of the people might comment about the price being too high. Well, don't just end there. Ask, what would you pay? And again, this is just a single data point. They're probably always going to give you a super low price because they're trying to negotiate. But that's actually helpful for you. If you're trying to then go talk to the investor and they're asking those questions that were on the previous slides, like how's it going? Why don't we have any applications? What do I do? This information is what they need to hear. Hey, 3 people toured. 2 of the people said it was priced a little too high. How high? Well, it was priced about $150 too high. Yeah, I don't know if we need to do $150. Maybe let's just decrease it by $100. Let's see how that goes. And I'll go talk to those same people because I have a note that said how much they would pay, and let's go back to them and negotiate. So that's a really, really important piece of tour feedback. If you're not collecting that, if you're not asking that, then that 50% goes down and down and down and down. So you really have to get these answered. The other most important thing after price is this, right? It's the condition. It's anything dirty or uncomfortable. And I say uncomfortable because it doesn't just have to be dirty, right? Uncomfortable could be, the entranceway was a little tight, the stairs were in a weird spot, whatever it is. You're just trying to understand, is there something about the product that I didn't understand before? These people who are touring should be telling you new information, something that you haven't heard before, that you don't actually know. That's price, and that's, well, the in-person experience of the property. And now, cool, you're getting the tour feedback. You know you have to get at least 50% of your tours to give you feedback. You know what to get specifically when you get that feedback. So how do you use it? What do you do? Well, there's a famous thing that says, it takes 7 ads before you buy something. Maybe that's not perfectly true, but it takes a lot of times of repetition for someone to feel comfortable with an idea, is basically what it's trying to say. So every time you talk to that investor, if you can bring up this tour feedback every time, even if it's a week or 2 old, 3 weeks, 4 weeks old, I mean, their house isn't rented yet. This is a person who was so interested in their house. They drove there, liked the outside, decided to go in. You have self-touring technology, let themselves in, and, came out of it with the price is too high. So if you can remind them about this, and every time it happens, and just every week talk to them, you have to make it a highlight of it, right? Oftentimes, that tour feedback is 3 weeks old. It's not relevant of what people think. It actually is perfectly relevant. You need to bring it back up every time. because they're not going to care the first time they hear it. They're going to say, let's wait for more. You have to then get more. And then you might have now two that say the same thing. And then they've heard it 5-6 weeks in a row. Okay, let's lower the price. All right, concessions. Gone over a few good things here. I'll dive into concessions now. So concessions are interesting. Most people don't know if they even work. I think property managers have it as this kind of last resort. You know, hey, I know you wanted that rent price. You don't want to lower it. It's not leased yet. There's a thing called a concession. And so they can work. And I can tell you which ones work the best. So the strongest concession is the rent discount. What is that? That's, month of free rent. You can imagine why that's a powerful one. There's other ones you can use, but from our research, from what you can find on your own research online, this is the one that's the most popular. And there's a good reason why it's most popular. It's because for two reasons, really. One is for the renter, as you can imagine. The other one is for you guys, like the property manager, the investor. So this is the most important part about the concession. It's you can advertise a lower rent price. Now, this is something that is it's not that advanced, but it is a little bit more advanced than your typical concession advertisement. So this is what the big players are doing. This is what largest property managers, the biggest REITs, multifamily, this is what's going on. So I can give you an example in the next slide, but generally you want to advertise a lower rent because, well, that first month is free. So I guess, if you actually calculate how much money they would have paid over the 12 months, it's less than what the base rent is, right? Because they've only paid 11 months. So what you're really trying to get at is something called net effective rent, right? It's the total rent that you can collect during the term divided by the months of that term, right? So it's just, let's say it's $2,000 in rent. Well, they only paid 11 months. So let's do some math real quick. It looks scary, but here it is. So here's how you calculate it. Here's two ways of doing it. So one is you're doing a free month of rent at $2,000. That quick math is, well, they paid $2,000. They will be paying $2,000 over 11 months, but they really only have to, but they actually pay that over 12 months, right? They don't really pay $2,000 a month for all 12 months. They actually pay a little less if you do the math here. So the net effective rent is actually $1,833, and this is what you should be advertising. So that's a big deal. This is how concessions get used appropriately for getting more leads, right? Everything goes back to that price pulse. It's how many leads am I getting per week? Is it going to is it aligned with the investor's strategy? Do I need to reduce the rent, raise the rent? Well, this is a way of reducing the advertised rent without actually reducing what's called the base rent, that $2,000. So this is how you should be performing a concession. You might already be doing concessions. I don't know if everyone's doing it like this, but this is actually how you get more leads in the door. Now, this is a more complicated looking thing, but it's doing the same thing. The reason it's more complicated is because it's not so nice just being 1 month. It's 14 days free. Maybe someone's not wanting to do a full month concession. So 14 days. Well, if the rent price is the same, how you read this is really just, you're trying to find how much is $2,000 of rent? How much is that like every day? Like just how much is of rent do you pay a day? So this is what gets that. Well, 14 days is free. So there's 16 days in the month that they actually will have to pay. So, okay, how much are they paying per day? They actually only have to pay 16 of the days, not 30. So, okay, this is how much they'll pay for that month that's only got 16 days in it. Then how much are they going to pay for the rest of the term? So you do the 2,000 times the next 11 months. So that gives you some big number, how much rent, that's the total rent you will have collected over the whole term. And you divide it by, well, the months in the term. So that gives you 1922 as the net effective rent. So again, they're doing the same thing. You're taking your base rent, you're applying a concession, and you're doing some kind of basic math here to advertise a lower rent. And so you gotta probably ask the question, or you gotta know that you need to explain this really clearly to leads, right? It needs to be put in the listings marketing description. It can't be hidden in some area. It needs to be upfront, and that's okay. It's all right if you explain it clearly, right? People should understand before they start spending money to apply to, even potentially drive to the property. They really should be told exactly what's going on. So just make sure when you implement this, you're advertising this lower rent price, just make sure you explain how you got here. You don't have to put math on the marketing description, but just to make it clear that, hey, it's the advertised rent is already including the 1 month of free rent, something like that. It can be a little more descriptive than that, but just make sure you explain it. And now what's really cool is, well, like I said in the beginning of this concessions, most people don't actually know if the concession even works, right? They're just like, I don't know, let's do a concession because I don't know what else to do. Well, so using this price pulse is actually the perfect way to see if the concession is working. So what's allowed us to do this is, well, you've understood what the price pulse is the leads per week, and then of days on market. And then what you've done with the concession is actually lower the price, the advertised price. And so now you can see, is that lowered advertised price really bringing in more leads than we had the previous weeks? This is how you start explaining concessions. I think it's all too common to like talk about a concession, get the investor excited to do it, and you don't really know how to report back on if it's working or not, other than, we don't have any applications. This is before you get an application, or maybe you just simply don't get an application at this price point, but you understand the effect it had on your listing because you're doing these price pulses. So in summary, talked about 6 tactics for pricing. This is just a summary page here, but yeah, it's just calling out the main things, right? So CMAs, look at the photos, make sure that days on market is in line with the investor's strategy. Price pulse, we've said it a few times now, it's the ratio of the leads to the days on market. You want about 5 leads a week, changes based on market, based on type of house. Pre-leasing, that's when you try to get it on the market, advertised before it's rent ready, and you're just trying to find the right price. If it gets leased, that's gravy. Don't set expectations with investors like that. Just say, hey, the goal is to learn what the right price is without losing any money, right? It's not vacant yet. Condition of the property, well, that one line, right? Good tenants want good landlords. It's a pretty powerful line to use to get them to make the condition a little bit better. Tour feedback, well, you're asking those 2 things. You're making sure you're getting 50% of tours have tour feedback. And then lastly, we talked about concessions. So the main concession just being able to advertise that lower rent. So yeah, now I'll stop sharing my screen.
Great.
Yeah.
That was a really good rundown of all the different steps that maybe some of us skip or don't have the tools maybe, or haven't thought about the tools to get them done. I do want to launch one last poll question here. Well, we have a few that we didn't launch, but I think this one about learning more about sunroom rentals before people start heading out here. We are going to do some more questions, so please stick around a little longer. So Sunroom Leasing partners with property managers and does help with these types of leasing practices and implementing them. That's what Darius works on so hard is really those 4,000 units that you guys are managing now. I mean, it's really using all these best practices. So just a yes or no question, I'll leave that up there. And then we can get through some of the questions. There's definitely a few that came in. Let's see, any stats for the Northeast part of the country on typical rent increases post-inflation? So a little
Yeah,
outside your market.
I wish I could answer that. Sorry, Kate Thor. I don't know. Sorry about that. You have to Google that
No
on your.
worries. Judith, how do you raise the rent when people have already answered the ad at the lower price?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks, Judith. So there's a couple ways of handling that. You can, depending on your own kind of style, you can keep track of when they came in and what price they saw, and you can give them that, totally just keep them at that price, kind of grandfather them in. Or you can say, hey, we get it, but sorry, the price does change based on the demand we get. And there seems to be a lot of renters interested. So, if you really want this place, I just recommend you apply now. The rent most likely won't go back down.
Yeah, that's pretty typical, I would say, and especially in a competitive market. Byron is asking here, is pre-leasing the same thing as having a waiting list on hand?
Yes. Pre-leasing, it is very much the same. I would say pre-leasing builds your waiting list. Yeah. So yeah, pre-leasing is just a way of saying the whole, marketing, going to the property, potentially even signing a lease before it's rent ready.
Okay. Sue asking, why do you say that we shouldn't show the property while it's still occupied? I always do this.
Oh yeah, no. It's not that you shouldn't show it. What I was briefly mentioning was there's a self-tour technology that you only want to put on a house that's vacant. You don't want to let people walk into someone's house on their own while the person lives there. But if you have an agent, leasing agent, then definitely feel free to schedule an occupied showing. I still generally recommend against it, only because it depends on the situation, but oftentimes the current tenant is not keeping the house very nice, or who knows, they might even kind of give off a weird vibe if they're actually at the property when you guys show up. So it kind of throws a curveball that maybe you don't want to have.
It can be a little awkward for sure. Then from Haley, do you serve, or I think Hale, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but do you serve the San Diego area?
Oh, I'd love to serve San Diego. I was just there last week. Beautiful place, but no, currently we don't support San Diego. But if you have any properties a little closer to Arizona, then maybe we can help you.
All right, Kay Thor, what is the benefit if you are still collecting less as a landlord? I think this was in reference to the concessions.
Yeah, so that's why a concession is a last resort thing, because generally it's when you've got to a situation where the investor can't really lower their price anymore, whether it's a mortgage related thing or just a principal. A concession is just to get people in the door, and it will still lose the investor some money. But if you think the property is going to be on market more than 30 days, then a 30-day concession, or rather like a 1 month free concession, could actually, calculate out to be more money. So it all depends on the investor situation. If they can't lower the price anymore, the concession is the only way to actually show the lower price.
Okay, good advice. I remember during the pandemic, there were some crazy concessions that I was seeing happen because the market had kind of come to a standstill at the beginning. And I think like the worst concession I ever saw was no security deposit. So please always collect a security deposit. I hope I don't have to ever say that. It's good to just do, a month. I think that's reasonable. Sue is asking if that would be the first or the last month for the concession. How do you do it?
Yeah, so how we do it is the first month is always paid in full, and then the next month is usually the month that is prorated.
Mm.
That's the same thing as it goes for if you move in halfway. So you move in May 15th, you don't move in with a half paid rent. You move in with full paid rent, and then the next month you'll just pay that prorated amount, so the half. So that's the same thing with concessions.
Right. Sandy saying, can you explain how to use the Zillow website to determine the rent in your area? How far out of your neighborhood should you go for your type of single family home?
Yeah. So maybe I don't have time to bring up the site and actually run it, but typically, if you Google for the Zillow rental estimator, it's not a Zestimate, it's different. It'll give you a map, and then you can type in some filters like beds, baths, square footage. And then on that map, it knows where your kind of subject property, where your listing is. And then you can just start choosing homes, like checking them on, and then start looking at the photos. And yeah, it's a very visual tool. It might take a couple tries to really get the hang of it, but yeah, not sure if I fully answered your question, but hopefully that helps.
Well, I put it in the chat for you all to check out if you want to look at that. I think the other one we use as well, I've heard people use is Rentometer. But I think they were talking about the radius. But I think, as far as the radius goes for a single family, the Zillow, they already include the radius, right? You don't change it.
Yeah, I mean, the most simple way is just put a radius of less than a mile. If you want to get a little more complex, you can actually compare neighborhoods, so they don't have to be close to each other to be comparable. It can be all the way across town, but the types of homes and the types of people living in those areas just happen to be similar.
All right, Nicole, any additional advice on attracting quality tenants?
Yeah, I guess so. We talked about the condition being good. I mean, honestly, a quality tenant is for the most part, it's just someone who's going to keep the property in a good condition and then pay rent on time, and not cause so many headaches for just a small maintenance. So there's not a whole lot to vet against it. So what we do though, is we just make sure that they're going to pay rent. I think that's the main thing. That's where you really start to lose money. So we, at Sunroom, we actually connect to their payroll, we connect to their bank, we scan their documents to see if they've been photoshopped. We do a face scan. We basically have all this technology to make sure this is the person who they say they are. They actually make this much money, and I would say that's the most important way to make sure you have a quality tenant, is just make sure they can actually pay the rent.
Yeah. And I think even just them knowing that you have those standards will automatically weed out the people even before you start screening them. So Eric asking here, how do you manage pre-lease when you're getting many more than 5 leads per week on a beach property, he says?
Yeah, if you're getting many more than 5 leads per week, that's when we kind of were talking about that you could raise the rent. So managing it, I guess managing it could be talking about the rent, and then could maybe be talking about just people wanting to move in really quickly, but it's not ready. You just have to keep them warm. So, don't just talk to the lead and then in 4 weeks hit them up again saying, hey, the home is now ready to be toured and you can move in. You have to have a system to at least maybe message them once a week saying, hey, we're excited that you're interested in the home. We're taking photos tomorrow. The bathroom has just been renovated. We've just cleaned, whatever. Send them any type of update and they'll very much appreciate it.
Yeah, that is, it's great to have those kind of communications. It's always good to start off on the right foot. Janet asking, is it better to advertise coming soon instead of pre-leasing? I find it works best vacant and unit is clean and ready to go, so they actually see what they are applying for.
Yeah, I think these terms are pretty similar. I think they're just trying to describe the same thing. So yeah, I think coming soon and pre-leasing, I think they're both fine. I generally think coming soon makes more sense for the average person. I think most people outside of real estate don't know what the heck pre-leasing is. So it's probably better to say the words coming soon. Yeah, and I don't remember the second part of the question, but hopefully that answered it.
Yeah. So let's move on here to the next one, Mary. So do you advertise the net rent amount or the full amount? And does the lease specify the full rent and 1 month free as well?
Yeah, so you do advertise the net effective rent. That is the main point of that concession, is just so you can advertise that lower amount. And then the lease has nothing to do with the net effective rent. It does say the concession. It does say 1 month will be free, and then the next months will be at the base rent, with the higher rent. Yeah.
So it's for marketing purposes,
For
essentially.
marketing.
Yes. Byron, is Texas out of your service area?
Oh, Texas is where we're at, Byron. Yeah,
Yay.
Byron, hit us up. I'm in Austin, Texas right now, actually. That's
Nice.
where we're based out of. And yeah, we're very good in Texas. We've been here for a long time. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Great. Let's see if I can find anything else. Shay, do you give free rent on a 12-month lease? I guess I would expand on that. Like how long of a lease would you do a 1 month rent on?
Yeah, it is on a 12-month lease. So it could be on any length. The 1 month rent is just a really, really bold concession, gets people excited. So it can be a short lease, generally want it to be a 12-month lease. But you might want the lease to be 16 months, because then it'll actually end in the summertime. And the next time it gets leased, it'll get rented for more. So yeah, it's on a 12-month lease, whatever you want, 1 month off. You don't have to increase it to like 13 months just because you gave 1 month free.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I think we covered all the questions. We went a little over on time. Thank you for sticking around and being generous. We had some great questions, really lots of great information. Everyone, you're going to get the recording tomorrow, like I said, and the PowerPoint. So you can review all this stuff now and later, whenever you're going to be, getting your next vacancy. I'm getting lots of thank yous in the chat. So it seems like everyone learned a little bit of something new. So thank you, Darius. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Alexandra. This was great. Thanks for everybody for showing up.
All right, everyone. Take care. Have a great day. Bye. Bye.